I remain skeptical about what Musk and Ramaswamy can do. What do you get in government? You get waste, fraud, and abuse. But the idea that you're going to revitalize manufacturing in the United States it's kind of a pipe dream. And the promoters of AI, they say it will like triple the potential growth rate in the United States. There's no way. Musk and Ramaswamy, they're the two personalities that will be leading this new Department of Government Efficiency, which is a little bit of a contradiction in terms because governments aren't efficient. This is going to be the Department of Government Efficiency. So why aren't they efficient? A civil servant doesn't have the same incentives as a private businessman in the profit and loss system. What do you get in government? You get waste, fraud, and abuse. Now, back to Reagan. In 1982, Reagan formed something, it was called the Grace Commission after Peter Grace was the chairman of W.R. Grace, a big conglomerate company, little like Musk and Ramaswamy, smart businessman. And he got a group of experts together, including myself, because I was on the President's Council of Economic Advisors. In 1984, he issued the final Grace Commission report. It had 2,500 recommendations of how to make government more efficient. Almost none of them ever was really implemented. And that's why I remain skeptical about what Musk and Ramaswamy can do, because my experience and my studies about how government works, let me give you an example of what I ran into. The U.S. Defense Department has many military bases that they don't need. They're surplus. And these military bases we have 50 states in the United States. Every one of these states has military bases in. And if you go into one of those bases, it's surplus. You want to get rid of it. You have 2 U.S. senators in each of the 50 states. They will be against it. They won't want it shut down. And you'll have at least one congressman involved, and they will resist. So it's very hard to shut a base down, even if it's not being used. I went in to the Defense Department, just to give you another ridiculous example. This is the early 1980s. They had warehouses. And so I said, well, what do you have in the warehouse? They had vacuum tubes. You know, the tubes you used, you didn't have chips, you had vacuum tubes. They had warehouses full of vacuum tubes. This was in the early 1980s. And I said, oh, those are surplus. You're never going to use those. And they resisted. They didn't want to get rid of them. They said, well, you never know. And it's not costing us anything. We already bought them. We're not being charged rent or anything like that. We'll just keep them there. Are we going to privatize? About 25% of the land area in the United States is owned by the federal government. The federal government owns almost huge chunks of the western part of the United States and totally mismanaged. We were going to privatize the grazing lands where cattle, sheep, and so forth graze, and timberlands. Reagan put it in his fiscal 1983 budget. I wrote the paragraph in the president's budget introduction, and it never happened because there was all kinds of resistance, political resistance, local resistance to it. The civil servants will resist being fired, having their pensions taken away, and things like that. So there'll be a huge resistance to it. Here's the problem. Businessmen think they can manage the public sector like they manage a business. They can use business methods. So what happens with Musk? If something isn't going right at Tesla, he fires the employees and replaces them, or maybe just eliminates them. You just can't do that in the public sector. It's a different game. The rules are all different. And private businessmen simply don't understand the public sector and what the rules are and the complicated politics involved. This has always been a political calling card, as we say. Everybody's going to revitalize manufacturing. By the way, what does that mean? The manufacturing output in the United States, it goes up, acute. So what are we revitalizing? Manufacturing output actually goes up. What goes down is the number of jobs in manufacturing. The productivity goes up, up, up. Their total output goes up, but you actually have fewer employees. So when they talk about revitalization of manufacturing, they mean more jobs in manufacturing. And it's just not going to happen. The trend is fewer jobs, more automation, more robots, more AI. All of the AI is what? It's a job destroyer. What's a robot do? A robot, it replaces workers. It destroys jobs. Now, I think all the automation and AI and robots, those are all good because it destroys certain kinds of jobs, but it opens up other kinds of jobs. So it shifts everything around. But the idea that you're going to revitalize manufacturing in the United States it's kind of a pipe dream. It's the same thing in Europe. All the advanced economies, it's always the same thing. But in the grand scheme of things, if you talk to some of the people in Silicon Valley, they say, oh, with AI, the potential U.S. growth will be up at real growth 6% or something like that. It's ridiculous. It's never going to happen. The real growth potential in the United States is about 2.2%. And it's not going to change very much because of AI. But if you listen to Silicon Valley types and the promoters of AI, they say it will like triple the potential growth rate in the United States. And if you just look at the numbers, just do a back of the envelope calculation, which I've done, there's no way. It's not going to change things very much. I think it's been overhyped, overblown. The book is really a treatise on what they call capital theory in economics. And capital theory is very important because capital, the stock of capital and the quality of capital that you have is a very important factor, determines the potential growth rate in an economy. If you don't have any capital, you're not going to grow. And if you have a big stock of capital and it's high quality, your potential growth will be a lot greater. Now, how do you get that? You get it by waiting, and waiting gets paid a price, and that's the interest rate. Now, what is waiting, actually? Waiting, a unit of waiting is equal to 1 unit of consumption that you defer 1 unit of time. That means you don't consume everything today. You save, you wait, you don't consume. And if you wait, you have to get paid an interest. Otherwise, you won't wait. Otherwise, you consume everything. So the key and the way to think about it is that if you look at economic textbooks, the textbooks all write that the inputs, you have 3 inputs into the production process: land, labor, and capital. If you put more land, labor, and capital into the economy grows. You get output. And what Professor Yitger and I have done in this book, Capital, Interest, and Waiting, what we show that clears up a lot of economic problems and theory. We say, no, the inputs into the production process are not capital, labor, and land. They are waiting labor and land, because capital is the embodiment of labor, land, and waiting. So it changes the way you analyze economic growth and the way you analyze interest rates, because remember, I said waiting, not consuming, but waiting, saving, investing, and waiting to consume at some later time. But to do that, to incentivize you to do it, you have to be paid an interest rate. So this all comes into the price of waiting. Interest rates are very important because they affect both the supply and demand of waiting. How much you're not going to consume, how much you're going to wait to consume. So the shape of the yield curve, the structure of interest rates, the level of interest rates, and that is important because that is the price of waiting and affects the supply and demand for waiting. And the supply and demand for waiting is ultimately going to influence the stock of capital that you have and how fast the economy can grow.
姐妹们总烦恼脸上细纹、干燥与暗沉。现在起，跟我一起放心交给 KS Royal Face 皇家颜值逆时奇迹系列。KS Royal Face 皇家颜值逆时奇迹系列，它添加5种 EGF， 专门防止肌肤老化，强化皮肤修复，增加肌肤弹性水嫩， 轻松抚平皱纹，换回青春自信。KS Royal Face 皇家颜值逆时奇迹，护肤露、全效精华、精华霜，即刻启动冻龄密码。